Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to show you guys how to use watercolor complete beginner. So got the brushes. Any watercolor brush will do. I have a number 3, number 5, and Winsor & Newton paint set. This is a set that you've seen me use throughout the past week. I just dab a little bit of water to the can, and then I dab it to the paper. So I'm going to show you how to do a technique in watercolor called wet into wet. So just choose any watercolor color you want, put a bit of water on the paper, and just dab it into the water, just to familiarize yourself with how watercolor reacts to water. And another way to use watercolor is by using it wet onto dry, or wet into dry. So basically, the paper or surface you're painting on is dry, and then you apply some watercolor to that surface. And there's another technique which you just see me do here, which you add the purple to the pink, and yeah, you could blend colors. So here I'm gonna show you how to mix a color wheel. For those who are absolute beginners at watercolor, I highly recommend you learn how to mix the color wheel. So the 3 primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. So basically, I think this is French ultramarine blue, but basically every single color you'll ever need to use when painting a picture or image or anything, regardless of the medium, you're going to need to know how to mix the primary and secondary colors. So here you see I'm mixing up an orange. So red and yellow makes orange. I'm mixing the secondary colors, and blue and red makes purple or magenta. It depends on how much red you add to the purple. If you add a lot of red, you get a little bit more of a magenta pinkish color. If you add a lot of blue, you get a little bit more of a purpley blue color. So I'm just jotting down the name of the colors I'm using, just in case you guys want to follow along and want to use the exact same color that I'm using. So the red color is actually permanent rose, but I write per for short. So this blue that I use, it actually was French ultramarine blue, and this is Winsor green, so yellow shade. So that means Winsor green yellow shade means that this green is closer to the yellow side of the color wheel. It has more yellow in it. I think Winsor & Newton do another green called Winsor green blue shade, which has more blue to it. But in the middle, I am mixing up my own blue green because I don't really know where that color is. And next to green, you have yellow green or green yellow. So it's the same sort of content thinking. It's yellow or it's green with a little bit more yellow in. And I think this is one of my favorite color in the color wheel. It's a secondary color because it makes amazing, beautiful grass, beautiful cut green, really nice. This is how I usually work. Dark over light. And I usually allow my layers to dry before going on. Before doing any more painting. I know some artists out there, they like to do wet into wet, which I think I'm gonna do towards the end of the video. I'm gonna show you how to put all these things together. You always have to work from light to dark. I have yet to meet an artist who use dark color and then try and put a light color over it. Perhaps with opaque medium like acrylic, you can do that, or gouache, but not acrylic gouache you could use, but not watercolor. So here I'm doing washes, and I think these are really good to do. The first wash I did was watery, and this is a little bit thick here that I'm doing. This is really a good exercise to do because in watercolor you could go from thin washes, medium washes to thick washes. When I make thick washes, you could mix the paint and to make it look more creamy or milky, a bit thick, a bit rich in color. And that is one way that I know a lot of artists have done to darken up their colors as well in watercolor. And I think that is one of the beautiful things with watercolor that I haven't yet experienced in other painting medium. So I'm trying to see how far the paint can spread with a thick layer of paint. It can actually spread very far. So here I'm going to show you how a lighter color cannot go over a darker color in watercolor. For those who are beginners, yeah, for those who aren't, you already know this. So I've just demonstrated that you can hardly see the yellow over that green. But here now I'm going to put the lighter color, which is a yellow, and I'm going to show you how you could build up darker values over this. Dark over light colors, the only way to go with watercolor. So I'm sure you guys have heard of the watercolor chart. So basically the watercolor chart is you list all your colors that you have in your watercolor set, and you mix them together one by one, like blue and yellow, green and red, to see what it's gonna look like. But because it's watercolor, you gotta mix some thin and then you gotta mix some thickly, because watercolor pairs different based on how thick or thinly you apply the paint, and also on how much layer you use. So here I'm lightly sketching in a green pepper of an image I found on the internet. And one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how, by using just 3 simple colors, red, yellow and green, how you can make a watercolor painting that looks a little 3D-ish. That looks good. So I am going to do a technique that I generally don't do in my own work. I tend to wait until my paint dries, so I'm going to keep this one very loose. I'm going to do wet into wet mostly. Maybe it's a technique you might not like, but I encourage you guys to try out different watercolor techniques, to mix and blend them. Generally when I'm working, I work from wet into dry. Sometimes when I'm lazy, I go wet into wet. But when it dries, for me, I always find that I could add more definition to it, to the painting, to make it stand out a little bit more. So I've first laid in like a base color, and I'm mixing up a darker value to put on the edge of where the shadow is, and I'm only using 3 colors, as I said before. I'm not using any more. So for those who are absolute beginners who want to get their toe wet into watercolor, trying to limit the amount of color you use is actually a very good idea. And with the color that you decide to use, I recommend mixing up a darker shade to it. You can mix all 3 primary colors together to get that, or you could mix the opposite color. So red, this is a green pepper, so if I wanted to darken it, I could mix all 3 colors together, or I could use the opposite color on the color wheel to red, which is green, and that will also give me a dark earthy tone, which will work just as fine. So I am pausing every now and again because I'm looking over at the reference to see where the different values go, where the light goes, where the dark goes. And I don't think I'm not gonna allow it to dry. I'm just gonna go straight in wet into wet. I actually love painting like this sometimes because it loosens me up. You know, because it's the different values, how dark. When I say value, I mean how dark or light a color is. And it's those values, it's those different shades in colors that makes the painting look more interesting. When I mean interesting, I mean look, if you're trying to make the painting not look flat, varying your values is one of the ways to do that. When I say interesting, for me it means not painting flat. Nothing's wrong with painting flat 2D if that's what you're going for, but a lot of time in my cases that's not what I'm going for. I'm not saying I'm never gonna try painting like that, but for now this is just what I like to do. But I will definitely experiment with different ways of applying paint to paper. So here you see that I'm added the shadow. I'm darkening it up slowly. I'm adding red to it. I'm adding all three colors to it just to make it a little dark. And yeah, this is it really. And then I think towards the end I noticed that it looks as though it's floating a little bit in the air. So towards the end of the video I put a little bit of shadow underneath the bell pepper, just to make it look as though it's adhering to the ground, that it's on a surface as opposed to just hanging in the air. So I really hope you guys found this video helpful. I really hope you gained something from it. I really hope that it's answered some of your questions that for an absolute beginner you might have, or even for an intermediate student or intermediate artist. If you've been using watercolor for a long time, you might know most of these things, but you might still not be so certain about some things. I hope that it's been able to shed some light on how watercolor works. I actually love the texture it's creating wet into wet. It's because the bell pepper wasn't really smooth, it had a little bit of texture to it. And unknowingly, this wet into wet technique is doing that. And there it goes, the shadow that I told y'all add in. So yeah, that's it guys. So remember to share. You could share this video with someone if you like. If you found it helpful, like, comment, and subscribe. And as usual, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!